4 women from different walks of life committed crimes so shocking that even seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend their actions. But years later, their prison interviews reveal disturbing truths about the darkest corners of the human mind and the warning signs we all missed. When we think about the most dangerous criminals behind bars, our minds often conjure images of hardened men with violent histories. But today, we are going to explore cases that shattered that assumption completely. These are the accounts of 4 women whose crimes were so calculated, so ruthless, and so unexpected that they left entire communities reeling in disbelief. What makes these cases particularly haunting is not just the severity of their actions, but the way these women used society's trust in them as weapons. They were nurses, mothers, teachers, and businesswomen, people who were supposed to protect, nurture, and guide others. Instead, they became predators, hiding in plain sight. But here is what makes these accounts different from typical crime coverage. These are not just tales of evil acts. They are urgent warnings about the psychological manipulation tactics that can destroy lives, the red flags that communities overlooked, and the survival techniques that ultimately saved countless potential victims. Each of these women is currently serving time in maximum security facilities across the United States. Their prison interviews, combined with extensive investigation records, have revealed patterns that every person needs to understand for their own protection and the safety of their loved ones. Linda Rodriguez worked as a registered nurse at Riverside Medical Center in Ohio for nearly 8 years. She was known among her colleagues as the nurse who always volunteered for extra shifts, especially during holidays when other staff members wanted to spend time with their families. Patients and families praised her dedication, and she had received multiple commendations for her compassionate care. Rodriguez grew up in a middle-class family in Toledo, Ohio. She was the youngest of 3 children, and her parents described her as a helpful, studious child who always wanted to take care of others. She excelled in school, particularly in science courses, and her teachers encouraged her to pursue a career in healthcare. After graduating from nursing school with honors, Rodriguez quickly found employment at Riverside Medical Center. The hospital was known for its excellent patient care, and Rodriguez seemed to fit perfectly into their culture of compassion and professionalism. She specialized in caring for elderly patients, many of whom were dealing with chronic illnesses that required long-term treatment. In the spring of 2018, something disturbing began happening on Rodriguez's shifts. Patients who had been stable for weeks or even months suddenly experienced mysterious medical emergencies. These incidents always seemed to occur during quiet periods, when Rodriguez was the only nurse on duty in their wing of the hospital. The first incident involved an 82-year-old man named Robert Patterson, who had been recovering well from hip replacement surgery. During one of Rodriguez's night shifts, Patterson suddenly went into cardiac arrest. The medical team managed to revive him, but doctors could not explain why his heart had stopped. His family was devastated, but they were grateful that Rodriguez had been there to call for help immediately. 2 weeks later, a 75-year-old woman named Dorothy Chen experienced a similar emergency during another of Rodriguez's shifts. This time, the patient suffered severe breathing difficulties that required immediate intervention. Again, Rodriguez was praised for her quick response, and the woman survived after several days in intensive care. The pattern continued over the next 6 months. Patients under Rodriguez's care experienced unexplained medical crises at an alarming rate. However, because Rodriguez was always the one to call for help, and because she seemed so dedicated to her patients, no one initially suspected that she might be the cause of these emergencies. The truth began to emerge when Dr. Patricia Wells, the hospital's chief of medicine, noticed an unusual pattern in the medical records. She discovered that patients under Rodriguez's care were experiencing emergency situations at a rate that was statistically impossible to explain through natural causes. Dr. Wells quietly began reviewing security footage from the hospital corridors. What she found was chilling. The cameras showed Rodriguez entering patient rooms late at night, staying for longer periods than necessary for routine care, and then leaving just minutes before medical emergencies occurred. The investigation expanded when Dr. Wells discovered that Rodriguez had been accessing the hospital's medication storage system during times when she was not scheduled to administer medications. The security logs showed that she had been taking insulin, potassium, and other substances that could cause the exact types of medical emergencies her patients had been experiencing. The breakthrough came when investigators searched Rodriguez's locker and found a small notebook containing detailed observations about her patients' reactions to different substances. The notebook revealed that Rodriguez had been systematically experimenting on her patients, recording their responses to various medications she was secretly administering. Even more disturbing was the discovery that Rodriguez had been deliberately targeting patients who were most vulnerable and least likely to survive medical emergencies. She had been choosing elderly patients with existing health conditions, calculating that if her experiments went wrong, their deaths would be attributed to their underlying illnesses rather than to her actions. The investigation revealed that Rodriguez had been responsible for at least 12 unexplained medical emergencies over the course of 18 months. Miraculously, all of her victims survived, thanks to the quick response of the medical team and the advanced life support equipment available at the hospital. Rodriguez was sentenced to 25 years in prison after pleading guilty to aggravated assault and attempted murder charges. She is currently serving her sentence at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, where she has been placed in protective custody due to the nature of her crimes. During her psychological evaluation, Rodriguez revealed that she had developed what experts call a God complex. She believed that she had the right to determine who lived and who died, and she had convinced herself that her actions were justified because she was testing whether her patients were strong enough to survive. The most chilling aspect of Rodriguez's confession was her admission that she had initially become a nurse because she genuinely wanted to help people. However, over time, the power she held over life and death became intoxicating. She described feeling a rush of adrenaline whenever she caused a medical emergency and then helped save the patient's life. Angela Foster appeared to be the perfect mother. She lived in a comfortable suburban neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, with her husband David and their 2 children, 9-year-old Tyler and 7-year-old Madison. Foster was active in the Parent-Teacher Association, organized neighborhood barbecues, and was known for her elaborate birthday parties and holiday celebrations. Foster had grown up in a wealthy family in California, where she was accustomed to a luxurious lifestyle. Her parents had provided her with everything she wanted, from expensive clothes to exotic vacations. When she married David, who worked as a middle manager at an insurance company, she struggled to adjust to a more modest standard of living. Despite David's steady income, Foster found herself constantly craving the attention and sympathy she had received as a child. She began creating small dramas in her life, such as claiming to be sick when she was not, or exaggerating minor problems to gain attention from friends and family. In the fall of 2019, Foster's behavior became increasingly concerning. She began posting on social media about feeling unsafe in her neighborhood, claiming that she had noticed suspicious people watching her house. Her posts generated significant attention and sympathy from her online community. Foster then escalated her attention-seeking behavior by reporting to police that she had received threatening phone calls. The calls, she claimed, were from someone who knew details about her daily routine and was planning to harm her family. Police investigated these reports but found no evidence to support Foster's claims. The situation reached a terrifying climax on a Tuesday morning in November. Foster called 911 in a panic, reporting that her 2 children had been kidnapped while walking to school. She told police that she had been following behind them in her car, as she often did for their safety, when a dark van pulled up next to the children and forced them inside. The kidnapping report triggered a massive response from law enforcement. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was called in, and an Amber Alert was issued for Tyler and Madison Foster. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search, and the case received extensive media coverage. However, investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies in Foster's account of the kidnapping. Security cameras along the children's route to school showed no evidence of a dark van or any suspicious activity. Additionally, Foster's description of the events kept changing during repeated interviews. The breakthrough came when investigators discovered that Foster had been researching kidnapping cases online for months before the incident. Her internet search history revealed that she had been studying how kidnapping investigations worked and had been reading about cases where children had been successfully recovered. On the 3rd day of the search, investigators made a stunning discovery. Foster's children were found safe and unharmed in a storage unit that Foster had rented under a false name 3 weeks before the alleged kidnapping. The children were confused and frightened, but they were physically unharmed. Tyler and Madison told investigators that their mother had told them they were playing a special game of hide and seek. Foster had convinced them that they needed to stay hidden in the storage unit for several days as part of an elaborate game. She had provided them with food, water, and entertainment, and had visited them secretly each day. The investigation revealed that Foster had carefully planned the fake kidnapping to generate attention and sympathy. She had been struggling with feelings of inadequacy and had become addicted to the emotional support she received during crises. The kidnapping was her most elaborate attempt to become the center of attention. Foster was sentenced to 15 years in prison for child endangerment, filing false police reports, and wasting public resources. She is currently serving her sentence at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville, where she has been undergoing intensive psychological treatment. During her psychological evaluation, Foster was diagnosed with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental health disorder in which a person creates or exaggerates symptoms of illness or distress in another person to gain attention and sympathy. In Foster's case, she had used her own children as victims to generate the attention she craved. The most disturbing aspect of Foster's case was her complete lack of understanding about the trauma she had caused her children. She genuinely believed that because Tyler and Madison were not physically harmed, her actions were not that serious. It took months of therapy for her to begin to comprehend the psychological damage she had inflicted on her family. Victoria Blackwood taught high school mathematics at Westfield Academy, a prestigious private school in Connecticut. She was 34 years old, held a master's degree in mathematics, and was considered one of the most effective teachers at the school. Students respected her, parents trusted her, and the administration had been considering her for a department head position. Blackwood had grown up in a financially struggling family in rural Connecticut. She was an exceptionally bright student who had earned a full scholarship to attend college. Her success in overcoming financial hardships had made her a role model for students from similar backgrounds. At Westfield Academy, Blackwood taught advanced placement mathematics courses and also served as the advisor for the school's mathematics club. She was known for staying after school to help students with their homework and for organizing special study sessions before important examinations. In the spring of 2020, parents began receiving unusual requests from Blackwood. She started asking parents to contribute to what she called special educational funds for students who could not afford certain learning materials or opportunities. These requests seemed reasonable because Blackwood had a reputation for going above and beyond to help her students succeed. The requests gradually became more frequent and involved larger amounts of money. Blackwood told parents that she was organizing special tutoring sessions, advanced mathematics competitions, and even college preparation workshops that required additional funding. She always emphasized that these opportunities were crucial for their children's academic success. Some parents began to feel uncomfortable with the constant requests for money, but they were reluctant to question Blackwood because of her excellent reputation. They also noticed that Blackwood seemed to be targeting families that she knew were particularly concerned about their children's academic performance. The truth began to emerge when several parents compared notes about Blackwood's funding requests. They discovered that she had been asking multiple families to contribute to the same supposed programs, and the amounts she was requesting were far higher than what any educational program would reasonably cost. The parents brought their concerns to the school administration, which launched an internal investigation. The school's financial records showed that Blackwood had never submitted receipts or documentation for any of the educational programs she claimed to be organizing. The investigation expanded when administrators discovered that Blackwood had been using her position to manipulate students as well as parents. She had been convincing students to provide her with personal information about their families' financial situations, which she then used to determine how much money she could request from each family. The full extent of Blackwood's manipulation became clear when investigators examined her financial records. Over the course of 3 years, she had collected more than $150,000 from parents and students at Westfield Academy. She had been using the money to fund a luxurious lifestyle that included expensive vacations, designer clothing, and a high-end apartment in Manhattan. Even more disturbing was the discovery that Blackwood had been emotionally manipulating her students to gain their trust and cooperation. She had been identifying students who were struggling academically or socially and then positioning herself as their special advocate and supporter. These students became unwitting accomplices in her schemes because they genuinely believed she was helping them. The investigation revealed that Blackwood had been using sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques to exploit the trust that parents and students placed in her as an educator. She had studied her victims carefully, identifying their vulnerabilities and using that knowledge to maximize her ability to extract money from them. Blackwood was sentenced to 12 years in prison for fraud, theft, and abuse of her position as an educator. She is currently serving her sentence at the Connecticut Women's Correctional Institution, where she has been participating in programs designed to help inmates understand the impact of their crimes on victims. During her psychological evaluation, Blackwood revealed that she had initially started asking for small amounts of money from parents, because she was struggling financially. However, she quickly realized how easy it was to manipulate people who trusted her as an educator, and her requests became increasingly elaborate and expensive. The most concerning aspect of Blackwood's case was her ability to rationalize her behavior. She convinced herself that she deserved the money because she was such a dedicated teacher and that the parents could afford to contribute to her lifestyle. She showed little initial understanding of how her actions had betrayed the trust that parents and students had placed in her. Natasha Vulov appeared to be a successful entrepreneur who had built a thriving business empire in Miami, Florida. She owned several companies, including a talent agency, a modeling school, and a beauty products company. Vulov was known for her glamorous lifestyle, her expensive cars, and her ability to help young women launch successful careers in modeling and entertainment. Vulov had immigrated to the United States from Eastern Europe in her early 20s with very little money. She had worked multiple jobs while learning English and studying business, and she had gradually built her companies through what appeared to be hard work and smart business decisions. Young women from across the country came to Miami to work with Vulov, believing that she could help them achieve their dreams of becoming successful models or actresses. Vulov had an impressive portfolio of success instances, including several models who had gone on to work for major fashion brands and appear in national advertising campaigns. In 2021, several young women began coming forward with disturbing accounts about their experiences working with Vulov's companies. They described being required to pay large upfront fees for training programs, photo shoots, and other services that were supposedly necessary for their career development. The women reported that Vulov had promised them lucrative modeling contracts and entertainment opportunities, but these promises never materialized. Instead, they found themselves trapped in cycles of debt, constantly being told that they needed to pay for additional services to achieve the success that Vulov had promised them. Some of the women described even more disturbing experiences, including being pressured to participate in inappropriate photo shoots and being threatened with legal action if they tried to leave Vulov's companies before fulfilling their contracts. The investigation into Vulov's business practices began when the Florida Attorney General's office received multiple complaints from young women and their families. The complaints described similar patterns of deception and financial exploitation. Investigators discovered that Vulov had been operating what was essentially a sophisticated pyramid scheme. She would recruit young women with promises of modeling and entertainment careers, charge them large fees for training and services, and then use the money from new recruits to pay for the lifestyles of previous recruits who had achieved some level of success. The investigation revealed that Vulov had been deliberately targeting young women from small towns and rural areas who had limited knowledge about the entertainment industry. She had been using their dreams and aspirations as weapons to exploit them financially and emotionally. The full extent of Vulov's criminal enterprise became clear when investigators examined her financial records. Over the course of 8 years, she had collected more than $3 million from hundreds of young women who had believed she could help them achieve their dreams. The investigation revealed that Vulov had been using sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques to maintain control over her victims. She had created an environment where the young women felt isolated from their families and dependent on her for their sense of self-worth and future success. Most disturbing was the discovery that Vulov had been systematically destroying the self-confidence and financial security of young women who were already vulnerable due to their age and their unfamiliarity with the business world. Many of her victims had borrowed money from family members or taken out loans to pay for her services, leaving them in debt and unable to pursue their dreams elsewhere. Vulov was sentenced to 20 years in prison for multiple counts of fraud, racketeering, and exploitation of vulnerable individuals. She is currently serving her sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida, where she has been participating in programs designed to help inmates understand the impact of their crimes on victims. During her psychological evaluation, Vulov revealed that she had initially started her business with genuine intentions to help young women succeed in the entertainment industry. However, she had gradually become addicted to the power and control she held over her victims, and she had lost sight of the harm she was causing. The most concerning aspect of Vulov's case was her ability to maintain her victims' loyalty even after they had been exploited. Many of the young women continued to believe in her promises and defend her actions, even after investigators had exposed the true nature of her business practices. These 4 cases reveal disturbing patterns about how predators operate within trusted institutions and relationships. Rodriguez used her position as a healthcare provider to gain access to vulnerable patients. Foster exploited her role as a mother to manipulate her community's protective instincts. Blackwood leveraged her authority as an educator to extract money from trusting parents. Volkov preyed on young women's dreams and aspirations to build a criminal empire. Each of these women understood that society places special trust in certain roles and relationships. They deliberately chose to exploit that trust for their own gain, causing immeasurable harm to their victims and communities. There are several warning signs that appeared in all 4 cases that everyone should understand. First, each of these women created artificial urgency around their requests for money, cooperation, or trust. They made their victims feel that immediate action was necessary to avoid disaster or achieve success. Second, they all isolated their victims from other sources of information and support. Rodriguez worked alone during night shifts. Foster discouraged her children from talking to others about their games. Blackwood positioned herself as the only person who truly understood her students' needs. Volkov convinced her victims that other people would not understand their dreams and ambitions. Third, they all used their victims' emotions against them. Rodriguez exploited patients' trust in healthcare providers. Foster manipulated her community's protective instincts toward children. Blackwood took advantage of parents' desire to help their children succeed academically. Volkov preyed on young women's hopes and dreams. Understanding the psychology behind these crimes can help people protect themselves and their loved ones. All 4 women were skilled at identifying and exploiting psychological vulnerabilities in their victims. They understood that people are more likely to trust someone who appears to be helping them or who holds a position of authority. They also knew that people are more likely to comply with requests when they feel that their safety, success, or reputation is at stake. The most important lesson from these cases is that predators often hide behind masks of respectability and care. They may appear to be the most helpful, dedicated, and trustworthy people in their communities. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate strategy to gain access to victims and avoid suspicion. These cases remind us that evil can hide behind the most respectable facades, but they also show us that justice is possible when communities come together to protect the vulnerable. Each of these women was ultimately caught because someone was brave enough to speak up when they noticed something was wrong. If this exploration of criminal psychology has opened your eyes to the warning signs of manipulation and exploitation, please share this knowledge with others who might benefit from it. Consider subscribing to Criminal Mind Cortex for more deep analyses of cases that can help protect you and your loved ones from similar predators. Remember that the best defense against these types of crimes is an informed and vigilant community. Stay curious, stay cautious, and never hesitate to ask questions when something feels wrong. Your intuition could be the key to preventing someone from becoming the next victim of a predator hiding in plain sight. What other cases would you like us to investigate? Let us know in the comments below, and we will continue to shed light on the criminal minds that threaten our communities and the brave people who work to stop them.